All right, we're going to be creating a second stamp that's going to be used for your portrait. So the material that we're using is styrofoam, and I want you to be able to learn how to print from a variety of materials. So your stamp for your background was carved out of a piece of rubber, but now your stamp that you're going to use for your portrait is going to be made from the styrofoam. So what you're going to do to begin with is you're going to look at the photograph, and you need to outline the edges of your face in Sharpie marker. So these are called contour edges. I'm looking at where my cheek line is, the jawline, the side of my forehead, the edge of my hair. I'm going to outline all of that in Sharpie marker. And the key to making this portrait look like you is that your outlining on your contours have to be precise. If you just draw it really sloppy and messy, then the stamp is going to not look like you. But if you go slow and you're careful, you should end up with a cartoon version stamp that looks like you. So when you get to your face, I like to outline my dimples, and I'm looking at the edge of my nose. If it's from the side view, if it's from the front view, then you just might draw the right side and the left side of your nose. I'm tracing my nostril and the side corner of my nose. I'm drawing along the top and bottom of my eyelids, the round part of my eyeball, the black part of my pupil, and I've got some old lady wrinkles around my eyes that I'm going to include. When I get to my eyebrow, I'm just going to kind of draw the shape that my eyebrow is. It can be tricky when you do mouths, because if you don't get that line right on the edge of your lip, it's not going to end up looking like you. If your photograph is hard to see the edges of your lip, just call me over and I'll help you trace that part. When I get to the teeth, I'm just tracing the bottom edge and the top edge of my gums. It's going to bring out the definition of my teeth. Okay, when you think you're finished, then what you're going to do is turn it over. When you flip it over, you should see a contour drawing of your face. If it doesn't look like a face yet, then you might have forgot some pieces. But the best way to check is to flip it over and look at your lines. When that is finished, then you're going to take your next art supply, which is a piece of tracing paper, and you're going to put your tracing paper on your photo, or rather on the back side. And I'm actually going to draw the corner of my photo here. So I'm also going to draw right down the edge and then across here. You also want to check this. Did you outline your neck? Or if the top part of your shirt is visible, did you do the edge of your shirt? You want to do your shoulders and any details that you would see on your clothing, because you don't want it to look like it's just a floating head. You want to make sure you also include your neck and your shoulders. Okay, I'm going to leave it turned over. Then I'm going to take my tracing paper and I'm going to set that over the top. You should be able to see through to then trace your contour lines on your tracing paper. If you use Sharpie marker, it should have bled through so that you can now trace all these contour edges. If you're worried about your paper moving, you could just put a piece of tape to secure it. So once you finish tracing all the edges, you're going to end up with a cartoon version of yourself that's just got the contour lines on it. Make sure you do this step in pencil. So don't throw away your photo. We're going to save the photo just in case you make a mistake and you need to start over. You still have your reference photo. And then you should have your piece of tracing paper that has your drawing with pencil on it, and then we're ready to start to carve. Okay, the next step, once I have my tracing paper drawn out with my contour lines in pencil, is that I'm going to begin to carve on my piece of styrofoam. So you need to remember that stamps end up in reverse from the way that you carved it. So this is my stamp that I've already finished, and originally I was looking to the right in the photograph. When I carved this and I rolled the ink on it and I turned it over and printed it, I'm facing to the left because you're going to get an opposite print. So just be aware that it's going to be opposite from the way that you curved it. So if you have a particular preference where you're like, I want to look to the right on the final print, then you need to make sure that you face the drawing the opposite direction. So right now I'm looking to the left because I know when I stamp it, I will end up facing to the right. So really it's just a preference, doesn't matter to me which way you do it. Okay, then you have some masking tape at your table where you can tear off a piece of masking tape, and you're going to want to put your tracing paper on top of that styrofoam and then tape that to your desk so that it's not going to move around on you. Then you're going to switch to an ink pen, and there's either blue or black pens inside your container. I would just sample that on extra paper to make sure it actually drops. The reason why I like you to use an ink pen is because Sharpies are too pointy, they rip through the styrofoam, and pencils are too pointy, they rip through the styrofoam. But a pen has a nice rounded tip on the end of it that's going to carve in the styrofoam but not tear through the styrofoam. And I also like to use an ink pen because as you draw, you're going to see the ink on top of the tracing paper. So that way you know I have already carved this section because there's ink on top. Anything that still has pencil would be a spot that you did not finish carving. So you might have to go back and forth 2 or 3 times to get your ink to appear, and that's okay because you're just making that carving a little deeper in the styrofoam. Don't worry if you accidentally rip through the tracing paper, that's not a big deal, but you don't want to cut through the styrofoam itself. So you need to draw over the top of all your contour lines, including the outside edge of your shoulders, the outside edge of your hair. Okay. When you finish and take off the tracing paper, you're going to see some indentions in the surface of the styrofoam. You have to tip it at an angle to see the indention, but that's what it's going to look like. So when you're all done carving, then what we need to do is prepare it to become a stamp, so it's just the outside edge of your portrait. Alright, to finish up the portrait stamp, you've already carved into the surface of the styrofoam. What you're going to do is turn that styrofoam plate over backwards, and you're going to tape the back side of the styrofoam to reinforce it. So I'm just going to stretch that tape out, and I'm going to stick that all along the back edge. Styrofoam is a pretty brittle material, so it cracks apart easy. So if we put some masking tape on the back of it, it's going to help your styrofoam plate not tear apart. So please don't waste the tape. Please just use an amount appropriate to get the back of it coated. So once it's got masking tape on it, carefully take it off your desk. Then you're going to turn it over, and you're going to use a pair of scissors to cut around the contour edge that's the outside edge of your portrait. So this is going to be the edge of your hair and possibly along the side of your face and across your shoulders. Now, if you have a hard time seeing where to cut, you could look at your carving, get your ink pen, and you could draw in those lines if it's going to help you see where to cut. But I can just kind of glance at it and see the edge. So then just cut off any extra tape. And when you finish, so I had this already darkened so you could see the carving in it, but it's fine if you don't see yours. If you want to, you can trace it, but when you finish cutting around the edge, you've got the outside of your portrait ready to use as a stamp, which is the next step of this assignment. Please keep your pieces to this project in your art folder. Don't throw away your photos. Don't throw away any of the steps yet. Leave all of these pieces in your art folder. And then you've got scraps that can be thrown away in the silver buckets at your table. And then please put the scissors, the tape, the Sharpies, the ink pens, all the supplies back in your table bucket.